The long-awaited JFK files are out, in part. 2,800 never-before-seen records on the assassination of JFK were released by the National Archives, but hundreds remain classified. President Trump said he had no choice but to heed warnings from the CIA and FBI to keep some of the files secret for further review. Releasing them unredacted could pose irreversible harm to our national security. Here's some of what we learned from documents that were allowed to go public. In the aftermath of the assassination, the Soviets apparently worried they would be blamed for putting Lee Harvey Oswald up to the attack. More on that later. Also, the CIA once intercepted a phone call from Lee Harvey Oswald to the KGB's department in charge of sabotage and assassination before Oswald murdered the president. Another interesting item, a British newspaper received an anonymous phone call about, quote, big news in the U.S. 25 minutes before JFK was shot. So there actually was some big news in here, Kimberly.
You know, it's interesting because this is, I found, to be one of the more fascinating topics. Did you ever think in our, lifetime that they would reopen these files? And it's the question that I'm getting from everyone is, what are we going to find out? Are some things going to be held back? And I said, well, I think we're going to find out what they feel comfortable with us, knowing in terms of what transpired here. And I think it's an important moment in American political history and just in transparency for our government also, because a lot of times we'll say to other governments, what you guys are doing, you're not being transparent, you're not being open. I think this shows that actually we trust the American people to know this information, even though this dealt with one of our top secret intelligence agencies. And to me, that's like kind of the most compelling aspect. I don't know that I necessarily found something in this that was earth-shattering or altered kind of my fact pattern or the chronology as a prosecutor of what I thought went down. But in that very sense, I think it's helpful because people were thinking there was a big conspiracy behind this and wondering what was going on and if our government was keeping secrets from us.
You can't get away from the Russians, Greg. The Russians, they keep coming up.
They're everywhere.
In this show.
You know what I love about the Russians? They have a department in charge of sabotage and assassination. It is like they play the villain to a T. They'll put the sign up there and say, yeah, just go to the Department of Assassination and Sabotage. We have the cloaks over there, and the daggers are in the locker. Terrible. By the way, speaking of assassins, some of the best stuff here are the plots to kill Castro. This is the United States now. Contaminated skin diving suit, dusted with a deadly fungus inside. They were also going to booby trap what they called a spectacular seashell. So because Castro enjoyed diving, and they were going to put a shell that had bombs in it, but they couldn't find a large enough shell.
Shiny object.
I want this job, to sit around and come up with fantastic ideas. It's incredible. The only thing is that the problem with this, and I can see why some people are disappointed. It's like when you go to the carnival or a county fair and there's a sideshow and they go like, this is a bearded lady and you're really excited as a 10-year-old and it's just a guy in a dress.
And it pulls off.
Yeah. Or they say they always say like it's a monster rabbit, but it's like a goat with rabbit ears. And it's like, so I felt like we got led on a little bit. But my last point, Rachel Maddow just hammered Trump over this last night, saying how they couldn't get it right. She's been carnival barking for 9 months over Russian collusion with Trump, and there's more meat on a cricket than that story. So it's like she's essentially going after President Trump for what she's been doing every night from 9 to 10.
We're not clarifying a 60-year-old conspiracy theory. That's basically that's exactly what happens every night. Jesse. You've done a lot of research on this today, and I wonder what your biggest takeaway was.
Well, we have a team of Water's World researchers going over this page by page, so I really don't want to speak until we know the final decision that we've come to. It is funny off of Rachel Maddow how, the left fantasizes about assassinating President Trump, and then when he doesn't release things that might actually help other countries assassinate him through the CIA documents, now she's mad. So I don't know what to make of that.
That confused me.
I missed all.
She never said that.
No, isn't the left mad because Trump withheld some of the stuff because the CIA doesn't want any of their research and methodology?
I was more confused.
I was confused
by the first part.
No.
When you see,
I want to put like repellent up. No.
Okay,
I was going to.
I mean, I absolutely followed everything that you were
Thank you,
saying.
Dana. You know, it goes over some people's heads
Those
here.
are different documents exclusively obtained by Waters World.
Yeah, we're going to be releasing those documents later on the Waters World show on 8 o'clock on Saturday.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing
big
is
seashells, big seashells.
President Trump was asked by the CIA, Richard, to hold some of these documents back, but he has, in 6 months, it will be revisited again. So we will be able to hold all of this information and bring it back up.
I don't understand. The Secret Service knew that he was going to do this, and they should have gotten their act together to release all the documents at one time.
Meaning President Trump or Lee Harvey Oswald?
No. I mean, no. See,
that would be another conspiracy theory.
Jesse's confused the whole table now. But no, I'm saying that the intelligence agencies knew the president wanted to release his documents. He sent the memo over there.
Well, it was required by the law. In 1992, the law said on October 26th, 2017, this will all be released.
Right.
Unless there's a security concern, which there was, and President Trump heeded it.
Right, and I feel as though that the Secret Service had almost a decade to get their act together and figure out the security concern and deal with it. And I applaud the president for releasing these documents because I think the American people deserve to know what happened to JFK. And I think now we can put all of these conspiracy theories to bed, the third bullet, the umbrella man, that LBJ did it. All of these conspiracy theories can now go to bed, and we can move on and say he was assassinated. We now all know. We know it was Lee Harvey Oswald, and now we know.
Well,
Bravo, Mr. President.
On the 2 o'clock show today, the Daily Briefing, so Jim Woolsey, the former CIA director, was there.
Yeah.
And basically what he said is that there is a theory about this guy who was a Romanian agent, and he defected to the United States, highest level guy. And he said that Khrushchev had wanted JFK assassinated. So there was a plan going forward, but then he called it off. But Lee Harvey Oswald was such a diehard believer that he went forward with it, and then they had Jack Ruby kill him to make sure that there was that you couldn't find that connection. You buy that, Kimberly?
I got to tell you something. For me, some of these theories I'd already heard before, you know, that weren't very, revealing to me. And the Jack Ruby stuff I thought was kind of interesting. The other thing about going to get a confession in the hospital, I thought that was kind of interesting, but then really not able to do that. Was sort of a last-minute press to try to get that nugget to say, okay, we can wrap this up and close it down. History would have been very different, I think, if they had been able to obtain that. And then just the one other thing, Dana, that I found was really interesting was the phone call. There was an intercept of a phone call connecting, like we talked about the Russians. I mean, they're everywhere, between Oswald and then also a death threat against him. Those things were pretty interesting that I thought were new and kind of revealing.
I thought that Woolsey was making a lot of sense. Greg, what do you think about this British newspaper getting a warning 25 minutes before the news broke?
Sometimes I just think that is... you get a lot of chatter, I think, all the time, and you get that with terrorist attacks as well. So it may have just been a coincidence. I don't know who warned them. I don't know that part, but it's interesting when what you're getting is a look at what happens all the time, things that you don't know what's going on. When I go back to the Castro stuff, we were doing this too. We were planning to off, the head of a country because, he's because we didn't like him. And I look at this stuff and I go, this is really amazing. And we must be doing this now, or maybe we don't. But I wonder how many people have no idea what we're talking about because, it's 50 some odd, what is it, 60, how many years, where are we now? 53 years ago? 50 something?
Yes, 54.
Yeah. 54, yeah. So many humans spend so much time in fictitious worlds, playing video games that history is not as interesting.
It does also show you how the intelligence community basically is looking through thousands of haystacks, and the chances of finding the needle are pretty slim.
Well, I mean, I do think there is a Russian thread here, and the bombshell is...
Pull the thread.
Ready? If he's going to the embassy
and tell us that the emperor has no
Mexico,
clothes.
the Russian embassy, and he's meeting with these assassination squads or something like that.
He also went to the Cuban embassy.
And he's making calls, and he's speaking Russian, broken Russian. They got him on a wiretap. How is it not a conspiracy? And then you look at Hoover, the FBI director, making sure the public doesn't think it's a conspiracy because he wants to what? Make sure that there's not World War III? Because if everybody starts thinking the Russians were involved in a plot to assassinate the President of the United States, they're going to want to go to war.
Well, and that might be why the national security community is still concerned about the release of all these documents. So
true.
That's all we got.
The other thing to add to it is that the Warren Commission, which LBJ put on because people thought that he had done it, and they didn't even have any of these documents when they started their investigation. So
it says that there was tension between the FBI and the CIA. So some things never change.
Yep.
All right.